Okay, so tonight's question is it possible for the righteous to succumb to sin? Very important question, because a lot of people have complained that how is it possible for somebody who is a rabbi, somebody who is learned, who's a Torah scholar, to commit such terrible crimes, whether it is to steal or whether it is commit something else. It has been observed, unfortunately, throughout history that many great people have succumbed to sin. But here we're talking about tzaddikim, that the human being is weak, that he can fail, that he has weaknesses, we know. But is it possible for those who are righteous, for those who are supposedly much more learned, to commit mistakes? Well, Kohelet says it very clearly. Kohelet says, "Ki adam en tzaddik ba'aretz asher yaseh hatov v'lo yahata." It is almost impossible to find a human being, as much as of a tzaddik that he may be, that he should only do good and not make any mistakes whatsoever. Because we're only human. We're not perfect. However, there are various degrees in mistakes. There are mistakes that are done intentionally. There are those that are done unintentionally. There are those that are done out of negligence. There are various degrees of mistakes. So we need to understand a little bit about how these mistakes occur. What is exactly a sin? How is it possible that a human being who knows his maker, who knows his creator, nevertheless should rebel or should commit a transgression? And then we'll go on to those who are greater and those who are righteous, and see how is it possible that the same mistakes that others make, they make too. The commentaries tell us on that pasuk in Kohelet that there is no one who is perfect and that everybody makes mistakes, that therefore Adam tzarich lefashpesh b'ma'asav, as the rabbis tell us, it's always advisable for one to examine his deeds, always to check himself. Perhaps he was wrong, perhaps he made a mistake, perhaps he should have done it differently. We should never assume that everything is right and everything that we do or say is correct. We should always be mefashpesh, examine ourselves. Perhaps there's something to improve. That is always a good idea to do, and we will see later on how this helps. But in the meantime, we have to understand what the mechanism is here that causes this mistake. So we have to go back to the very beginning of creation, to Bereshit, to Adam HaRishon, and that is where the first sin is recorded. That is where the first mistake, however you want to call it, mistake or sin, transgression, open rebellion, did not follow instructions as he was told so clearly, black and white. So of course the men are going to blame it on the women. It was her, right? She made me do it. But ultimately we all have free will. We're hopefully endowed with a at least average degree of intelligence, and we should have known better. We should have at least investigated. We shouldn't have rushed to do something if we had any doubts. But in the very beginning of creation, that whole incident with the serpent is really a lesson for humanity. The lesson for humanity is this particular event that involves the serpent, that involves the temptation, is something that you're going to have to deal with for the rest of your life, for the rest of history. Continuous struggle between doing that which is right in the eyes of Hashem and that which is wrong, which is right in our eyes, in other words, that we have an interest in, but it may be opposed to his plans. Ultimately, the human being has two very opposing forces in him. And we don't have to call them Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov, the evil or the good inclination. It's something a lot deeper than that. It has to do with the neshama, that is a chelek eloka mima'al, that is a godly thing. It is divine. It is pure, the soul. And the guf, the physical body that comes from the earth and returns to the earth. And that which is physical is definitely not thinking of spirituality. That which is physical has desires. That's the way Hashem made it. And of course, we call them kohot hanefesh, kohot haguf, that they have instincts, they have certain desires. that stem or come from the bodily or physical needs. People have certain needs. The question is, are they really true needs? Are they really, really important? Especially when there's a greater need, and that is to do the will of Hashem. So because of this continuous struggle, one always has to examine himself to see if what he's doing is correct or not, because it could be that he's following the instructions of the guf, of the body, instead of following the instructions of the neshama. I believe it's a Sefer Chovat HaLevavot, who tells us that one has to continuously be aware that his greatest enemy is the Yetzer Hara, the greatest enemy of man. He's out to get him, and he's out to set up ambushes. That is his job, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for the entire life. From the beginning till the end. He's always there to get them. The Torah says so. Torah says, Lapetach hatat rovetz, velecha teshukato. In other words, the Yetzer Hara is always there. And naturally, elecha teshukato, you are somewhat inclined to do what he wants. You're somewhat attracted to that which he wants you to do. Elecha teshukato. In other words, it is human nature. It is completely natural to want to do what the Yetzer says. However, the Torah reminds us that that's not an excuse to just fall into this trap and to let him always win the battle. Vatatim sholbo, which means two things. Vatatim sholbo means you have the power to control him. Don't think it's a lost case. You will rule over him. Plus, Vatatim sholbo is also clear instructions. That is part of your job. That is the part of the job of every human being, Jew or non-Jew. We're not talking yet about Jews here. We're talking about human beings. That is the job of the human being, one of his missions, to continuously have the upper hand. He's capable of it, and he's reminded that that's what he needs to do. However, the rabbis nevertheless tell us that as much as a person tries, somehow there are certain things that he cannot avoid. Shlosha or shalosh averot en adam nitzol mehem kol yom. There are three sins from which a person has a hard time protecting himself every day. One of them we will talk about now. And that is hirhur ha'avera. Hirhur ha'avera means the thought of committing a sin. Well, at least it does not say that he commits a sin every day. There is some things that is hard for him to protect himself. Doesn't mean that he can't, but it's hard. He's almost never protected or never spared. He's always makes this mistake. And that is to be involved in thinking or planning about a certain avera, even though he doesn't carry it out. So the question is, well, wait a minute. Isn't it possible for tzaddikim that they are protected from hirhur avera? I mean, why do the rabbis tell us that no one is spared? In other words, everybody makes this mistake. They don't do the avera necessarily, but they are somehow exposed to hirhurei avera, to thoughts of sinning. What about the tzaddikim? There's a big difference between human beings. The word human being in Hebrew is called Adam. Adam, the rabbis tell us, Rashi Tevot, consists of 3 letters, which tell us a lot about the physiology of the human being. Adam is Efer, Dam, Mara. Ash, blood, bile. In other words, he's fragile. It is very possible that he will be tempted to commit a sin, because this is what he is made of. Based on these words of the rabbis, we can understand what they meant when he does not have an easy time protecting himself, defending himself from Avera. We're talking about the average human being. We're talking about the human being who is Efer, Dam, and Mara. But we're not talking about another kind of human being. As the Pasuk says, Adamele Elyon. The human being also has the ability to resemble his maker. In other words, if he uses his neshama to guide him instead of the body, instead of the physical body, then he can resemble and be like his maker. He doesn't have to be an animal. So those who are Adam, plain Adam, Efer Dam Mara, for them it is possible to make mistakes. But for those who are consistently striving for perfection, striving to be like a Kadosh Baruch Hu in his, in other words, in his attributes, just like he is kind and merciful, so should we be. In other words, those who strive to be more spiritual, they of course don't necessarily have to make the mistake of committing a sin, or even a hirhur avera doesn't have to necessarily enter their mind. So it all depends which human being we're talking about. What we see so far is that there's no doubt that part of our success in dealing with the Yetzer Hara definitely has to do whether we work on our midot, whether one works on his nature or not. People today have somewhat achieved some discipline with their diet to lose weight. It is important to them. They want to look good. They want to be healthy. And they have demonstrated that they can do a good job. Some people have a very hard time with that. They can't resist the food. They don't want to starve themselves. And that's why there's so many kinds of diets, because this one failed for them, this one didn't work out. And there's a lot of books out there. They're making a whole business out of this because it's important to people. But what this has done is it has demonstrated that if there is a will, there's a way. If you really want something, if it's important to you, you can do it. And that's all for the physical body, which eventually rots anyway. Nevertheless, I'm not minimizing it. Torah does tell us to be careful with one's health. I'm not minimizing it. I'm just saying that it proves that something is important, you can do it. The same is true with Avodah Lamidot. When one works on himself, which is really what all the Sifrei Musar, all the books on Jewish ethics really talk about, is how important it is for one to continuously work on his weaknesses, those characteristics that he has that are a source of problem, whether it's anger, whether it's stinginess, whether it's laziness. You know, we all have something to work on. If one regularly works on that and disciplines himself, he has a better chance avoiding trouble. In other words, staying out of trouble, making the mistakes, because he's continuously trying to discipline himself. He has a much better chance than somebody who's not even thinking of that. He's just allowing nature to take its course. Well, if nature takes its course, of course people are going to make mistakes, because you're not going to ask yourself, wait a minute, is this right or is this wrong? I'm not so sure. And we haven't gotten to yet why people make mistakes in judgment. Right now, all I said was that nature will take its course, because Elecha teshukato. In other words, the teshukah, the desire, is to do what the Yetzer Hara wants. So if nature takes its course, it's very easy for somebody to make a mistake. However, if somebody is aware of his mission in life, of what Hashem wants of him, and he realizes is that, you know, mistakes can happen, nevertheless he examines himself and he works on himself, he becomes a more spiritual person, and he disciplines himself, then of course he has a better chance of not making mistakes. But the real success comes to that individual who's working himself for a totally different reason. Not only does it help him stay out of trouble, when a person works on his character continuously, what that allows him to do is to be mevatel the koach of the Yetzer instead of pushing him off. When people are tempted to do something, to steal, to lie, anything, any temptation, there's three options. One option is, of course, to succumb, but then there's two options not to succumb. And they're very different. One is to push him off. Oh no, I can't do this. It's wrong. It's not right. That's called dihya. You postpone, you push off, you don't allow him to get close to you. There's something even stronger than that. You're not pushing him off, but you have completely annulled him. You've completely neutralized him. Nobody ever eradicates the Yetzer Hara from himself, no matter how great he is, how righteous he is. The Yetzer Hara is always there, but he may not be as active. He's been neutralized. The rabbis tell us that when a Jew neutralizes his Yetzer Hara, the Yetzer Hara becomes his friend. In other words, he doesn't bother him anymore. He doesn't go after him. Ultimately, the greatest success that a human being can have in working on himself and being able to fight off the Yetzer Hara is for him to be the master and not to be the servant. If one does not work on himself, one does not fight the Yetzer Hara, one does not deal with his own personal problems, then he may be strong enough to push him off occasionally because he knows it's wrong, or he's ashamed. You know, most people don't do certain things because they're ashamed. They may be caught. Can you imagine what all those politicians are going through after being caught with all the terrible things that they have done? It's tremendous shame. If there would not be any shame, people would do more terrible things. So the shame holds them back. So dehiyah, pushing off, is something very good. It's admirable that a person can be strong to push off the Yetzer Hara. But it is much better if he doesn't have to contend with it, if he has neutralized it. But can anybody say that he's already neutralized the Yetzer Hara? Neutralized? In the Kabbalah it is brought down that when one sees that the Yetzer Hara is going after him for a particular sin, trying to tempt him regularly from time to time, it is indicative that his teshuvah, if he has done once teshuvah, was incomplete. Had the teshuvah been complete, real complete, the Yetzer would not disturb him as often. Would not try, because what did we just say before? When you neutralize the Yetzer becomes your friend. If you have to push him off all the time, that's very nice. That means you're strong, Baruch Hashem, to push him off. But can you ever be so sure that you will always be able to push him off at all times? We spoke about this when we spoke about the testings, challenges. Maybe you were able to take the small challenge, but maybe when the temptation is greater, when the bribe is not $100, when it's $10,000, they're trying to bribe you, are you going to be able to do, hold yourself back, or will you be tempted to accept the bribe? So one who always pushes off the Yetzer is not as strong as one who has neutralized the Yetzer. And in order to neutralize the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, one has to regularly work on himself. And in this way he becomes the master and not the servant. Whereas one who is making mistakes from time to time or having to do battle with Yetzer Hara, he's really the slave. As we said, the shukato. He's the desire, the connection, the attraction to the Yetzer Hara is there from birth. It's natural for everybody. Just that everybody has a different type of Yetzer. Nevertheless, one who works on himself is able to repair any kilkul, anything that he may have done wrong in the past, plus the act of working on himself, that discipline, is able to make him stay out of trouble. Because of the importance of working on one's midot, the rabbis also tell us in the Kabbalah that Bashamayim, they're much more upset at someone who did not make an effort to fix than the one who just made a mistake and committed a sin. Because it is human nature to make mistakes. It can happen. It can happen to anyone. Yaakov Avinu was always afraid. Shema nitlachlech bechet. Maybe he soiled himself through some sin. Even Yaakov, of all people, was afraid. Yeah, everybody needs to be concerned. That is what we said in the very beginning, the importance of examining. However, if one did make a mistake and does not make any effort to repair it, what excuse do you have for that? For that, there is no excuse. For that, what are you going to say? You made a mistake, fine. Don't repeat it, repair it. And that is why real teshuvah involves harata. A real powerful teshuvah that is actually powerful enough to undo a sin requires repentance. It requires regret, remorse. Otherwise, it's incomplete. Otherwise, it may come back again. Otherwise, it could be that he will make the same mistake. But once you've broken the chain by feeling remorseful, terrible, it pains you what you did, that has more of the ability to make you switch directions and not having to Chas v'shalom once again fall into the same trap as before. Now, in speaking about teshuvah, the rabbis tell us that one should feel terrible if he committed a wrong, even by mistake, even unintentionally. Why should he feel bad? It's unintentional. Not because of the sin itself, but because niftach lo petach. Once somebody does something by mistake, unintentionally, the door is wide open. The next time around it's going to be easier for him to do so. As I explained when we spoke about Yaharek ve'al ya'avor, that there are certain cardinal sins that one has to give his life for and not commit the sin. And various reasons for that. Why those three? But one idea was that even if you were to do it because you're being forced, it's against your will, the terrible danger is there that the next time around you will do it voluntarily. The door has been open. The next time will be easier. And what's so serious about this? What's so serious about this is not so much the coming sin, not so much the ease of which you will do this next sin, because the rabbi tells na'aset lo keheter, that it does become easier, but it's not so much that. What happens with averot? Avera metamtemet et halev. The avera blocks the heart. It causes a certain blockage, and after a while, we lose sensitivity that what we're doing is wrong. And when we lose sensitivity about something being wrong, even a speech, even a book may not help to force the person to change his mind, to change course. Because he's gotten so used to it, he already does not see, he thinks it's quite acceptable. That is the greatest danger of all, that his teshuvah will eventually become more difficult and more difficult to do because he has sunk in sin. So not only does it become easier for him to do an additional sin, it is also more difficult for him to do teshuvah. The fact that somebody committed an averah unintentional is also very interesting. How could that happen? How would it be that in Hashemayim they should? Why did they protect him? Why did they just allow him? Remember, it's unintentional. And the rabbis explained that's because once upon a time he did it intentional. Once upon a time he wasn't careful. Once you on your own not careful, you don't care, then upstairs they say, we don't care either. We're not going to offer you extra protection. Those who are always careful, who make an effort not to do that which is wrong, they are offered Shemira min hashamayim, they are protected. Tzaddikim are therefore usually protected because they are careful. They want to be careful. They don't want to sin. So if it happens that somebody did make a mistake, he should ask himself, wait a minute, maybe once upon a time I may have done it intentionally. Or what about negligence? Pesha, pshi'ah. Pshi'ah could be somebody not reviewing Hilchot Shabbat. Hilchot Shabbat, there are many details in the laws of Shabbat. If one does not review them, one does not learn them, it's very easy for him to make a mistake. Is that unintentional? No, that's negligence. You should have learned. Ignorance of the law is no excuse, right? The same thing is true with any halakha, that you should have known, but you did not bother to learn or to review. So, if one is careful, one does his best, he's definitely offered more protection that he should not make mistakes. Because the Yetzer is always after us, and we have a difficult time enough dealing with him as the situation arises, whether it's in business, whether it's at home with one's spouse. There are many fights and many battles. You know, right now Northern California is doing many battles with many fires. They all need to be extinguished. Every human being does battle all time with the Yetzer Hara, but they're not always the same. Nevertheless, it's a continuous battle. It becomes worse if you invite the battle into your own home. It's hard enough that you're doing battle outside. It's hard enough that you have to deal with it as it comes. But to invite trouble, that's definitely no good. And when does one invite trouble? When one basically is looking for trouble. I mean, as the rabbis tell us, there is a great emphasis in Kriyat Shema, "V'lo taturu achrei levavchem v'achrei einechem." Be careful with what your heart desires and with what your eyes see. Don't allow your eyes to wander intentionally. Because if they wonder intentionally, that is where it all begins, between the heart and the eyes. After that, it's all a done deal. Chaz v'shalom. The eyes and the heart are the agents of sin. So the eyes, being, as they say, the windows of the soul, being the camera that records whatever it sees, according to the Kabbalah, what it may see will cause a tremendous pegam in the neshama, a tremendous blemish in the neshama. But it's not just a blemish, it is now that he has become weaker, in that he has invited trouble. He has seen something which may be forbidden for him to see. We're talking about staring at something, not seeing. We all see things occasionally. We're talking about staring, looking, wanting it. If it's something that's forbidden for us to look at, and nevertheless we do look at, it weakens us. And that is called inviting trouble. When you invite trouble, when you invite the Yetzer Hara over to your home, the battle will be much more difficult than if you live outside. Stay outside. And that is why I've always spoken about the problems, the dangers of television in one's home. It's enough you have to fight him outside. But to bring him into the home, to have to do with him battle at home, that becomes a much more difficult challenge. Nevertheless, some people say, it's okay, it won't happen to me, everything will be all right. They don't see that the damage is cumulative. You know, there was once a woman that told me, well, yeah, it's okay, whenever I see that my boy, my child is watching something not right, I'll just change the channel. If it turns out that there's... But what about the commercials in between? What about the things that pop up once in a while? You don't think that that flash of a moment does damage? So I like to give the mashal of somebody that went to buy a puppy for their child. And the owner of the puppy says, this puppy is a great puppy. It only has one problem, it bites once a week. Only once a week it bites. Would you want to buy something like that? Yeah. This TV, okay, you may see the Discovery Channel, you may see National Geographic, and see the pandas and all the animals and nice, and okay. It could be, there's a lot of good material there too, but occasionally there may be something very, very not good, not modest, and that's damaging. Even at that one moment, one scene could be very, very damaging to the soul. So why take a chance? Why invite the Yetzer Hara into your home? Actually, the internet is worse. And because the internet is completely free, and you surf, you get pop-ups. Yeah, you're right. Thank you for reminding. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of Torah, so you really need a good discipline, right? So anyway, what's gonna allow one to maintain good control over his eyes and over his behavior? No, that's not enough. We're going to get to that. Learning Torah is definitely a segula, but it's not enough. Ultimately, one has to have a certain degree of Yirat Shamayim. Reshit Chokhmah Yirat Hashem. Chokhmah is the Torah. You're right. The Torah, we're going to talk about how great it is, how important it is, how helpful it is, a person who learns Torah. But there needs to be a certain level of Yirat Shamayim. Without the level of fear of heaven, Yirat Shamayim, then the Zohar says, when one commits an Averah, and you wonder how it happened, the Zohar says, I'll tell you, he's a golem. You know what a golem is? He's like a raw human being for not having looked at his neshama kadisha, the Zohar says, for not having reminded himself that he has a beautiful, holy, divine soul. He's forgotten about that. So he's like a golem, like a block, you know, of meat, or whatever you want to call it. Is there another word for a golem? Yeah, something, a human being that is not refined, that is undeveloped, that has no Yirat Shamayim whatsoever, that he does not think for a moment about who he is and what he has. So what we've done so far in the past half an hour is discussed what the sin is, how it comes about, and how one has to be very careful and therefore examine himself from time to time. Now we've come to the real question of tonight's lecture is, okay, human beings can make mistakes, but what about tzaddikim who have been working on themselves, who have Yirat Shamayim, who have learned Torah, who know better, who are aware of their neshama and so forth? Nevertheless, can they succumb to sin? Is it possible for them to make a mistake? And we started off saying what Shlomo Melech says. Yes, it's possible for everyone to make a mistake, because no human being can ever say that he only does good and has never done anything wrong. Now, when we said mistakes, remember, can come out of ignorance, okay? So it includes all the possibilities. But I'm not going to even touch on mistakes out of ignorance. We're talking about the possibility, which unfortunately exists, of a tzaddik, Talmid Chacham, Torah scholar, supposedly a righteous human being, him not making something wrong by mistake, not doing something wrong by mistake, but intentionally perhaps, and even knowingly. Is that possible? The answer is yes. Yes, the answer to the question is yes, but we want to understand why. How is it possible? And I've heard this from many secular Jews especially. How could it be that this guy, who has a long beard, committed this terrible sin? And I tell him, what the difference is if he has a beard? Goats also have beards. What's the big deal? Well, you think the beard will protect them? Who cares about the beard? The beard doesn't do anything. The rabbis tell us very simply, the fact that one knows the truth, talking about not ignorance, he knows the truth, could he still commit a sin? The answer is yes, because of a ruach shtut. A spirit of folly has entered him, momentarily. If you want to have an idea of what a spirit of folly is, even though I'm not in the position to judge anybody, but read a little bit the chapter of Shaul HaMelech going after David. Shaul HaMelech, Shaul the king, going after David, even though Shaul, we're told, was tremendous tzaddik that never committed any sin. He was chosen by Hashem to be the king. So we're talking about a great man, and he was indeed a great, great man. Nevertheless, something went wrong. I'm not going to get into all the details of what went wrong, but briefly, there is a ruach shtut involved in any major mistakes. A ruach shtut is a spirit of folly, which basically says, I'm going to do this right now because it benefits me. He does not see the consequences of his actions, does not see the bigger picture, does not think in the long term. He thinks right now. Right now, it pays for me to do this and not have to worry about anything else. In other words, somehow Ruach Shtut convinces him this is okay. Okay, when a woman or a man cheats on their spouse, we're not talking about somebody who does it regularly, who got used to it. It happened just once. It could be that at that moment he did not calculate well the consequences of his action. Why not? Because of a ruach shtut. In other words, at that moment he thought, okay, this is okay, it's acceptable, it's good, it will benefit me. But the loss is greater than the benefit. Are you willing to make such an investment where the loss is greater than the benefit? No, nobody wants to do that. Everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to make a good investment. But when somebody miscalculates, poor judgment, it's because of a ruach shtut. At that moment, all he was seeing or focusing is on the immediate benefit, the immediate pleasure, or the immediate whatever it is that he was trying to get. And therefore, he makes the mistake. And that's why the Torah reveals to us the mistakes of the Gdolim. Mistakes. If you learn through the Torah, you will find mistakes made by the greatest of all. Moshe Rabbeinu, Aharon, anybody you want to name, mistakes. And it's incredible how the Torah tells us this. It shows how objective the Torah is. Now, usually when you write a book about your leaders, you're only going to paint them in the best light. And here, the Moshe Rabbeinu, who's writing the Torah, he's writing his own mistakes.
If you call an animal or anything Muhammad, they kill you.
If you call who?
If you call, let's say, a teddy bear,
Yeah.
Muhammad,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Muhammad, they finish you off.
Yeah.
So it shows that they consider Muhammad, that.
Sure. Human beings are not perfect, and the Torah, for a variety of reasons, points out the mistakes of our leaders. One, to tell us that this is a possibility. It could happen. Shlomo Melech was the wisest of all, and he thought that no harm will happen if he does things a little bit different than what the Torah says, and he made mistakes. They all made mistakes. The other reason why the Torah records that, the rabbis tell us in the Gemara, is to give a petach of tshuva, to give an opening for teshuvah. You see, they did this, nevertheless, teshuvah is possible. In order to remind us that even those who are great have made a mistake, nevertheless, they chose, of course, the way of teshuvah, and they went about repairing it. So we see from many examples that the greatest have made mistakes. Let's briefly go on to what kind of mistakes. Well, the Torah very much points out that one of the greatest mistakes human beings make has to do with bias, being biased. Torah says, when it comes to money, to bribe, this bribe of money can blind the righteous, can blind the intelligent ones. Chachamim and tzaddikim, it doesn't say it can blind human beings. It says about chachamim and tzaddikim. It can distort their words. It can mislead them. Bribes, just plain bribes. Why is it that the bribe, the money, can distort their judgment? How come it can mislead them? What happens? They're tzaddikim, they're chachamim. Aren't they smarter than that? And the reason for that is because of bias. Rabbis tell us when a person has a negiot, which means an interest, he's biased because this man that he's about to judge is a relative, or because he's powerful, or because he has given money. That bias, whether it's the money that he has given him or because he's a relative, that interest clouds his judgment. It's so powerful that the commentaries explain the greatest tzaddikim in the world cannot claim they will not be influenced by it. Somebody, therefore, who is biased is disqualified from being a witness in most cases. In most cases, we cannot use his testimony. Because we cannot be 100% sure that what he's saying is true. But he's a righteous man, but he's a tzaddik, he's a talmid chacham. Makes no difference. The greatest talmidei chachamim, the greatest tzaddikim, if there is bias, remember, bias is the most dangerous of all. Once a person has a negiut, he's somehow involved, he somehow has an interest, no good. And there's a story of a judge who was walking towards his bet din that morning, or to shul, and somebody approached him, "Good morning, Rabbi, how you doing? Nice to see you." And each one went their way. A couple hours later, when the judge is sitting in the bet din, he notices that the guy who told him good morning earlier on is one of the contenders, one of the baalei din. So he tells his colleagues, "I have to disqualify myself. He said good morning to me this morning, so I already have some sentiments towards him. He was nice. Even a smile. You have to be very, very careful. We think it doesn't do anything to us, but it does. When somebody smiles to you, somebody says a nice word to you, and if he gives you money, what are you going to do? You're going to yell at him? He just gave you a lot of money, right? So it's a big problem. Now, the reason why bias is so powerful is not only because we don't actually see the danger anymore. Bias means that there's a certain closeness that therefore, we don't see our mistakes. Our judgment is a little bit lacking in those cases because of that closeness. But there's more than that. The mind in itself works like an attorney. The mind is very powerful. So you say there's closeness, but so what if there's closeness? Don't I know the halakha? Don't I know the Torah? The Torah tells me I have to be fair, I have to be honest and righteous. So what about closeness? But the mind is an attorney, and the mind is such a powerful attorney that it can justify everything. That's where part of the problem lies in. That you're right, somebody may be knowledgeable, somebody may be righteous, somebody may be a very, very nice person, but because this mind is so powerful, of course, it will tell you, oh, of course I would never do anything wrong against the Shulchan Aruch, against the Halakha. But the mind right now is distorted, or is justifying it based on its own way of looking at things and interpreting the situation. And that's where the problem lies. So which areas in life are the most problematic, even for tzaddikim? Negiut, we said, if there's a bias, regardless of what the problems are. The next area is money. Money as a whole is the biggest Yetzer Hara of all. The rabbis tell us it's the biggest Yetzer Hara, so big that the rabbis tell us Rubam begezel, mi'ut be'arayot, v'kulam be'avak lashon hara. When it comes to money, the majority of the world makes a mistake and falls in the trap of taking other people's money. It doesn't mean highway robbery. Taking other people's money means not paying them on time. It means cheating them, telling them the check is in the mail when it's not. Anything that has to do with money. Picking up somebody's phone and using it without his permission, especially where it costs money, right? Anything that has to do with possessions, with money, is gezel. A lot of people justify it. Imagine you're working for a big company and you made an order, and you ordered 50,000 of something, and you got 50,001. What would you do? Would you keep it? Or would you return it? Would you wait till they call you up and tell you they made a mistake of you? It all depends on how much Yirat Shamayim one has. An honest person says, I don't care if it's just one more out of 50,000. What's the big deal, right? No, one is it's wrong. Either I pay for it or I send it back. But one who is not that scrupulous, one who does not care so much, will say, well, it's a big company, they're rich, they don't care. What's the big deal? They give away pens for free all the time. Yeah, the mind can justify it in so many ways. What's the big deal? They won't even know about it. They won't even feel it.
Even if they know about it, you give it back, it takes forever to get it back to the right department. You got to go through
Right.
this one and that one.
Yeah. So money is a big issue, and I'm sorry to tell you, I'm sorry to disappoint you if you thought that there are some great people out there that you can trust them with your money. No. Don't trust anybody with your money. Rabbis tell us, kabdeu v'chashdeu. And the Shulchan Aruch says clearly, whoever lends money to somebody without two witnesses or without making a contract, he's committing a sin of misleading the other guy or tempting him to deny the whole thing. Did you ever hear of something like that? You're committing a sin. If you lend somebody, we're not talking about lending him $5. We're talking about lending him 100, 1,000, a large amount of money. And you did it without any contract, no witnesses. You're tempting him, in case he has that weakness. One of these days he'll say, no, I never got the money. Oh, you of course I did, but you owe me the money. You know how many stories I get every single day of problems like that? But I trusted him. I said, well, I don't care if you trusted him. You went against the Shulchan Aruch. How could you lend somebody, or how could you, I'm not talking about just lending, making a deal. He reneged on the deal. I said, of course. What did you think? He's an angel? He's a human being like everybody else, and he does not have Yirat Shamayim. Now you have to go to Din Torah. Now you have to take him to court, to the Jewish court. Why have to do that? At least if you had had some document, you would have had a better case. Yeah, but I trust it. Don't ever use that word. Trust only in Hashem. As the rabbis tell us, Tamim tiyeh im Hashem Elokecha. To be tamim, to be sincere, is only with him, not with anybody else. Rabbi tells, kabdeu v'chashdeu, be respectful of everybody, but be suspicious. It's not because he's not going to give you back the money. What if he dies? You're going to fight his kids? See what I mean? It's not only if he does not give you the money. What if he dies? Yes. It says the Shulchan Aruch says it's against the halakha to do something like that. No, especially with money. Especially with money. I mean, oral contracts is just a commitment, right? And it could be acceptable. A person can give instructions orally as far as his will. It's okay, but it's not a good idea. They're going to fight about what he meant, what he said. That's not a sin. But he can do so. He can have others write down what he's saying, especially if he can't sign. Is he going to do nothing? Say something is better than not saying at all. But to lend money, we're talking about money. Remember, the most powerful Yetzer Hara of all. You're tempting the guy. You're misleading him. You're causing him to maybe possibly at some future point to deny the whole thing. And if he does not deny, I don't recall. Same thing. What's the difference? Yeah. Anyway, the reason why there is such a big problem with money, anybody know why is money such a big yetzirah? What's the big deal? Why are people so crazy about money? Anybody want to guess? Yeah, it is, but why? Why? What's the big deal? Let's say you have a decent living, you know, you're okay. Why should that be such a big avodah zarah? It has to do with lack of emunah and bitachon, lack of faith and trust in Hashem. It's very, very clear to those who have bitachon that whatever is coming to me, I'll get. Whatever is not coming to me, I can't grab. If I'll grab it, they'll take it away from me. One who works on Shabbat basically does not have emunah and bitachon, right? Shabbat has no blessing. Rosh Hashanah, they decided how much money we're going to make. If we make it in illegal ways, we're not going to benefit from it. Somewhere down the road, we're going to lose it. Or we're going to pay attorney fees, or somehow it's going to be taken away from us. One who thinks that by accepting a bribe, or by taking money in an illegal way, or by cheating someone, or not paying back the loan, he's going to gain something from it, it's totally lack emunah and bitachon. And we've spoken about it when we spoke about emunah and bitachon. Is a lot of people have faith in God. They believe He created the world, but they don't necessarily believe that He continues to supervise and that He has complete awareness of all our deeds and actions, and that requires bitachon, complete reliance and trust in Him. Especially when it comes to parnasah, livelihood. What if they just fired you and you have 7 mouths to feed? You know, it may be tough. A person may start complaining. Anxiety attack is a little bit acceptable. I mean, people are only human and they may be a little bit anxious about what's next. But the greater the bitachon in Hashem, even that will not exist. Even that should not happen. It all depends how much bitachon a person has. A person will not have bitachon in Hashem unless, of course, he has a bit of yirat shamayim. You know, the yirat shamayim is the very basic. When a person has a little bit of, he's cognizant of the fact that Hashem sees exactly what he does. Therefore, he's fearful of Him. He respects Him. It's not enough to just believe in Him. Yes, I believe in Him. No. Does your actions reflect that you believe in Him, that He's also aware of everything we do, that you cannot hide from Him, that He will reward and punish those who do His will or go against His will? So there are people who are great scholars of Torah, know all the halachot by heart, but their yirat shamayim is lacking, their emunah or bitachon is lacking, it's weak. And because of that, when it comes to money, they go crazy, they go wild. And it's sad because it becomes like a sickness. Another couple areas that are very, very much a source of trouble to many, many people in this world is akina, hatava, ve'akavod. Motzim et ha'adam min ha'olam. Rabbi tells us one who has jealousy, one who's always in pursuit of his personal desires, whether it's food or whatever, and kavod, he wants honor. These things drive people out of this world. And they drive him out of the world to come too. Motzim et ha'adam min ha'olam. He may just be prepared to do terrible things to get what he wants, all because of jealousy, ta'ava, desires, and kavod, the pursuit of honor. So these are 3 that can apply to any human being, even if he's a talmid chacham and even if he's a tzaddik. If he has not worked on controlling these 3, if he has not strengthened his emunah and bitachon, his yirat shamayim, he will always have to deal with these 3. Baruch Hashem, not everybody has all these 3. I mean, some people do have all of the above. And that's a big problem. But people have some weakness. It could be kina or tava or kavod, or it could be anger, as we said before, laziness. And these are big problems. If a person is lazy, he's going to miss out on many, many mitzvot, many acts of good deed. If a person is stingy, he's going to have a hard time with tzedakah, with charity. So everybody has their challenges. Regardless of how learned they are and how tzaddikim they are, if they don't work on themselves, they're always going to have that problem for the rest of their life. Then you have another individual who's really going through a hard time with a particular midah because of a previous reincarnation. In a previous reincarnation, he committed a terrible avera. So one of his tikkunim is to come back and fix it. So he's given the same kind of a challenge, and for some reason he's attracted or he is prone to do something, and he has to control himself. In other words, he's given a second chance to work on it. So sometimes when there's a very, very difficult challenge with a particular midah, certain characteristic or a certain avera, a lo ta'aseh, a negative commandment, it could be because of a previous reincarnation. And he has to realize that this is his test, and he has to work on it. Now, the rabbis tell us that, generally speaking, even though tzaddikim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu protects them because they've been tzaddikim, they've become tzaddikim, they've demonstrated that they want to do the right thing. Nevertheless, they have another problem. Kol hagadol mechavero, yitzro gadol mimeno. Whoever is greater than his friend, his yetzer is also more powerful. What does it mean more powerful? Not that he has a bigger yetzer necessarily, but that yetzer is more out to get him, lachshilo, the commentaries explain. His yetzer will go after him much more than somebody else. And we explained that 2 weeks ago when we spoke about challenges. Rabbi Elyahu says that when a person becomes a tzaddik, he becomes a better person, if Hashem would not increase the pressure on his yetzer, then his free will would be cancelled out. Because the greater a person becomes, if the yetzer doesn't pursue him, then he's so great and knowledgeable that he doesn't have to do any fighting. No, Hashem says no. The yetzer has to be increased as well in order that you also have a challenge or two, just like everybody else. So that's why the yetzer of those who are tzaddikim is much more powerful. In other words, is out there to get them. And don't think in any way for one moment that a person who's great is safe and secure. Take a look at the following example. Rabbis tell us, En apotrofos le'arayot. When it comes to the area of arayot, forbidden relationships, nobody can ever say, I'm secure, it's guaranteed. Nothing will happen to me. It's okay for me to be alone with that woman behind closed doors at night. Nobody can make that claim unless the doors are unlocked, unless the husband of that woman is in town and she's married. We're talking about married women here especially, right? If her husband has to be, she has to be afraid of doing something wrong. Or if there's even a child, not a baby, who's around. There has to be something to create not only some distance, but some hesitation of committing a sin. But if everything is in such a way where the man or the woman may be tempted because they feel secure, they feel that nobody's watching, they feel nobody's around, it becomes more tempting and more difficult. And nobody can say it won't happen. The greatest of the greatest have fallen in the areas of forbidden relationships. I don't mean that they've actually committed a sin, but they've almost done it. Unless Hashem, of course, protected them in the last minute. And if you put yourself in that situation, you may not get the protection. Hashem protects those who protect themselves. Hashem helps those who help themselves. But if you're going to put yourself in that situation, you're not doing the right thing. There's a story actually of two rabbis who were going down the road, going back to the yeshiva. And they could go right or left. Both ways would take them to the yeshiva. The left road had idols. A lot of idols on the way. The right road had a brothel. You know what a brothel is, where there's a lot of prostitutes. So they say, okay, let's figure out which way is better for us to go. This way, where the Avodah Zarah is, it's no big deal because we don't have any more the desire to worship idols. There's no Yetzer Hara. So let's maybe go that way because it's easier. Here, we're going to have to look at all those, what should we call them? What is that? No, zonot, prostitutes. And there's a Yetzer Hara for that. So what's your calculation? Yeah, but if we go that way and have to deal with the zonot, the prostitutes, and we control ourselves, we'll get rewarded for it. And we held ourselves back. And that's what they did. When they passed by, however, and the prostitutes saw the rabbis, they ran in. So it didn't really work out exactly how they thought, but yeah. But when they arrived at the yeshiva, they were basically told off. You didn't do the right thing. You don't put yourself in a situation and take a chance that something may happen. What if Miss Universe is there? Right. Just joke. I mean, it doesn't make a difference. Yeah, it's not a good idea. No matter how smart you are, no matter how great you are, there are certain just areas of life that we cannot claim that we have all the strength to fight the Yetzer Hara. Yeah.
You, one of your previous shira, number 47,
Yeah.
Torah
Right.
indicated that the antidote to the Yetzer is...
I'm getting into antidotes. I'm getting to that. That's the last part of the lecture. In just another minute. Yeah. Anyway, before we get to the antidotes and how to really try to avoid all these problems, rabbis do tell us, just remember, in case you've seen a good man make a mistake, first of all, always give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you're not seeing right. But let's say you know for sure you saw him go into a place and do something terrible. Nevertheless, al teharher acharav. Don't go ahead and judge him negatively too much, because most likely the following day he did teshuvah already. In other words, even though we just said it's possible for the greatest to make a mistake, don't think too negatively of them if they're tzaddikim. In other words, they have a good track record, because there's a good chance he's already, by tomorrow, by the next day, he's already feels terrible about what he did, and he has done teshuvah. One has to be careful not to judge people the wrong way. And it can happen. You know, a mistake can happen. So don't be too negative. So we've spoken about that the possibility exists, the potential is there, the Yetzer is powerful, and not everybody is immune from it. Is there any way, nevertheless, to become immune? So, of course, the rabbis tell us, Barati Yetzirah, Barati Torah Tavlin. I've created the Yetzirah, I've created an antidote. And that's the Torah. Learning Torah, however, is not always enough. A lot of people learn Torah and nevertheless do all sorts of things. So the Kabbalah explains, you know which Torah is helpful? Torah L'Shem Shamayim. Even though the rabbis tell us you're allowed to learn Torah Shelo Lishma, not for its real sake. Shelo Lishma, from doing it for not for its real sake, you will come to Lishma. Get started. Learn. Open a book, even if it's just to become learned and knowledgeable, even though it's just because you're curious about something. Even if you're not doing it for the real reasons, it's okay. Eventually you'll be interested enough. Maybe you'll do it for the real reason eventually. Get started. Learn it Shelo Lishma. However, the Kabbalah explains that when you're learning Shelo Lishma, which you're allowed to, you do not have the protection that the rabbis tell us in the Gemara, the Torah Magna Umatzla. The Torah has the ability to protect one and to save one from sin and from all kinds of misfortunes. That's only if it's Torah L'Shem Shamayim. Pure Torah, L'Shem Shamayim, it has the ability to save one, to protect one from the Yetzirah. Not everybody, unfortunately, learns Torah L'Shem Shamayim. It sounds like something easy. For its real sake, no. It requires a certain amount of Yirat Shamayim already. It requires a certain amount of level that a person has already attained, that he has no interest whatsoever except to do the will of Hashem. The tzedakah that he gives is not for the reward. The tzedakah that he gives is not to get a good name. The tzedakah that he gives is to comply with the mitzvah of Hashem, complete out of love. That is a higher level. So that's the type of Torah that can help one dealing with the Yetzirah. But the rabbis give us another couple of advice that I'll share with you. One is Le'olam yargiz adam yetzirah tov al yetzirah. You want to do battle with the Yetzirah, this is the way to do it. You always take the initiative. Don't be on the defense. Remember the 6-day war? Israeli army took the initiative. Of course we won because of Hashem's help and guidance. But the same is true everywhere. With the Yetzirah, you take the initiative. Don't wait for him to come after you. How do you take the initiative? Give more power to the Yetzirah Tov. Always be involved in doing good deeds. Always be involved in doing the right thing. Always take the initiative to block him out. Don't bring things into the home that can lead to trouble. Always be on the initiative, meaning don't wait for the battle to come to you and then having to do battle with it. Take the initiative of overpowering the Yetzer Hara by being involved, by immersing yourself in positive activities that will neutralize that Yetzer Hara. So if you take the initiative of always doing certain things like learning Torah, going to a minyan, giving tzedakah, being helpful to people, this initiative will cancel him out. Because if a person, for example, does not take the initiative of being kind, let's say kindness to his spouse, then what will happen is, if anything occurs in the home that is not to his liking, he may get upset, he may curse, he may yell, he may do something terrible, which may get out of hand. Had he been involved in acts of kindness, he would avoid that. In other words, he's always involved in doing right things. Going by the book, less of a chance that he's going to have to do battle with the Yetzer Hara. He's taking the initiative. In the old days, the way they tried to dominate their Yetzer Hara was by fasting. The rabbis tell us in the past few generations one should not overdo it with fasting. It's better to just learn Torah, give tzedakah, and do maaseh chesed. Because when a person fasts too much, he weakens. He does weaken his Yetzer, but he may not have the strength to learn Torah. So we're not the type of generation that can handle all the fasting that they did in the past. Another idea that the rabbis tell us, that if you're having a hard time, is Yizkor Lot Yom HaMitah. Remember about death. Go to a cemetery, go to a funeral, go to a house of mourning, go to all these depressing scenes, because that will remind you, oh, wait a minute, one of these days I'm also going to be a few feet under. They're also going to cover me with shrouds. And that's exactly what one of the Rothschilds did. One of the Rothschilds, a religious one, had a secret room that nobody was allowed to enter, not even the maid. And there was one big rabbi who came to visit who was curious what's going on in that room. He heard about this famous secret room. What do you got? What do you got in the room? So he told him, I'm going to show you what's in the room on condition you don't tell anybody until I leave this world. Fine. Took him to the room. The doors opened. And what's in this room? A coffin, shrouds, a ner neshama, a candle, a book of Tehillim, and a talit. He says, I'm a very successful man, he tells the rabbi. I have a lot of money. And Baruch Hashem, my businesses are flourishing. And that has gotten me to become very arrogant and sure of myself. So I forced myself to enter this room and spend 20 minutes every single day and look at this and say, this is where they're going to put me. This is how they're going to cover me. This is what they're going to light for me. The candle is going to say Kaddish on me. And after I come out of this room, Rabbi, I'm a completely different man. This humbles me. And this is advice is in the Gemara. Yizkor lo yom hamitah. Remind that Yetzer who's after you, who's not giving you peace of mind. Remind him, if you have to, if the Torah is not working, remind him about the day of death. Wait a minute. One of these days, I'm not going to take it with me. Right? So why am I so crazy about this money? Rabbi tells in Pirkei Avot, remind yourself of three things: where you come from, where you're headed, and you have to give a reckoning one of these days, a din v'cheshbon. Also, reminders. People need reminders because of the routine, because of what they do every single day, because of their commitments. They forget to focus on what's going to eventually happen. And that focus is important. It would really help them do battle with the Yetzer Hara. Another important idea is what the Gemara mentions about Bnei Aliyah. As one rabbi said, expressed himself, I've looked around and I've noticed there are very few Bnei Aliyah. What's Bnei Aliyah? Bnei Aliyah means people who are always striving for perfection, striving to become better people, striving to grow spiritually. They're very, very few. Even though we look around and we see a lot of Talmidei Chachamim, we see tzaddikim, we see good people, they're not necessarily Bnei Aliyah. Bnei Aliyah means one who's always trying to become better, trying to grow, recognizes that whatever he has done so far is nothing compared to what he still has to accomplish in life. He's maybe done a lot. Oh, it's nothing. It's zero compared to how much I owe him, how much I still yet need to do. When one is never satisfied with his spiritual growth, he's always striving for more and for more, for more, he's considered a Bnei Aliyah. And that would be a beautiful thing, of course, for somebody to embark on, because every day will be different. Every day there will be growth. A person cannot stay the same. You either regress or you grow. I mean, you don't stay the same. Rosh Hashanah is coming up soon. You will ask yourself, wait a minute, have I become a stronger person spiritually? Or have I, Chaz Hashem, regressed? What has happened to me in the past year? If you're really honest with yourself, you can see it. You know, physically we stop growing at the age of 18, but spiritually we can grow and grow on forever and become more and more refined. So Bnei Aliyah means one who's always striving to become a better person. That helps with, of course, avoiding to the Yetzer Hara, not losing every battle to him. Another idea is Aseh lecha rav v'istalek min hasafek. When one consults with a rabbi, he may have a question: is this right or is this wrong, Rabbi? What do you say? Maybe it's just my Yetzer Hara, or maybe I am right. What should I do? I'll give you an example. Two brothers. Okay, they're fighting over an inheritance. Sounds familiar? Unfortunately, right? What should I do? Should I take it to court? Should I really give it to him? He's so unfair. He's not right what he's doing, and I can really prove it that he falsified all those signatures. I can really take him to court and land him in jail. And he's right. He's right about that. That other one was really... So what? Does that mean that you should do it? It's a very difficult question. Should you take him into a din Torah? Should you just give it up? It's a lot of money. We're talking about $1 million. $1 million. Should I just give it up? I don't want to fight. Or should I fight because it's the terrible thing? Did you all understand? I gave you a real life story of an example that exists. What should I do about it? What would you tell them? You know, it's a difficult situation. You know, you obviously don't want to do the wrong thing, but maybe it's the Yetzer Hara that's telling you to do this, and maybe not. So you consult with a third party who can be more objective and not biased. We're talking about here money, a lot of money. We're talking about here bias. It's your money. And you may not see things objectively. So Selech Harav, so you can consult with. It doesn't really have to be a rabbi, as a person who can really help you see things objectively. So that leaves no room for doubts. And the last one that I've added that is a very, very powerful mitzvah that can really help someone very, very much in life, not only avoid the Yetzer Hara, but to accumulate a lot of zchuyot, a lot of merit, is zikuy rabim. One who helps others do teshuvah, rabbis tell us, he will not come to sin so quickly. En chet ba al yado. Kol hamezaket rabim en chet ba al yado. That's like a guarantee. A person who's always dedicating his life, his time, to help other Jews come back to the roots, to strengthen them, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will help him that no sin will come his way. In other words, if he is causing so many to do teshuvah, it would not be fair for him to be in Gehenom and everybody else to be in Gan Eden, right? So Hashem says, I will offer him extra protection. So Zikuy Rabim, helping others do teshuvah, is a very powerful sigulah of not having to face such challenges in the Yetzer Hara. And last but not least, let's not forget that because the world is an imperfect place, man is here to perfect the world. Man is therefore born in an imperfect state. That is why he can come to sin because of that imperfect state. That is the challenge that we all have. Nevertheless, we can pray. We can pray to Hashem that He should spare us from the Yetzer Hara, and that's actually part of our prayer. Shetatzilenu mi Yetzer Hara. That's part of the prayer that we say every morning. Hashem, please help us. And Hashem does help us. The Rabbi tells in the Gemara, if it wouldn't be for His help, we would not be able to control the Yetzer Hara. How does Hashem help us? In all sorts of ways. Through distracting us from the Yetzer Hara. All of a sudden we were thinking of doing something wrong. Before you know, you got a phone call. That phone call could have been Hashem's help to distract for you from what you were just about to do. You never know. But we have to pray for it. But prayer is not enough. We have to actually make an effort. As I said earlier, Hashem only helps those who help themselves. And that is the rule, the famous rule that we have, that kol habali taher v'sayin oto min hashamayim. Those who want to get close to Hashem, those who want to purify themselves, they will receive divine assistance. Thank you.